Sorry, Declan, you were kind of a snooze, bro.
1, 2, 3, let's switch this up.
Hello and welcome back, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. Today I'm going to be going through all of the books that I read for the month of May. So if you're interested to know what I read and what I rated them, then keep on watching. So the first book for discussion is Waiting for Darkness by Toni Reyes. And this was a book that I received an electronic, like an EPUB copy of from the author directly. So he sent it to me, and this was probably back in like January or something, so it took me a while to read it. I will admit that. I apologize, Tony, if you're watching this. I personally really enjoyed this book. This book reminded me a lot of The Vampire Diaries, but specifically season like 5 with like Ketsia and Silas, or even like season 8 with Cade. Just because, like, obviously the vampires, duh, but because those are seasons where they like go back to like ancient history and they kind of do a little bit of like folklore and like, you know, mix all that kind of stuff together. And this book did that, I think, so well. Like, they took stories from a different religion, different folklore, Greek mythology, all kinds of stuff, and like put it together and made it like the ancient history backstory for this story, which I thought was so cool. I love stuff like that. It's very much an action-packed book as well. There's a lot of action scenes. There is no romance. Let me just put that out there for anyone who's watching this video that is a romance girly and is thinking this is going to be like Vampire Diaries and have some kind of love triangle with two brothers. There's no romance in this book at all. I gave this book 3.75 stars only because even though I really had a good time with this book and really enjoyed it, I wasn't in love with like the writing style. This book follows Cruz, and Cruz he really is on track. Like, he has his ish together. Like, he's a surgeon, he is married, he just bought a new house, like things are going great. He's living, loving, laughing, like he's doing all that stuff. And one night, Cruz goes out with his friend and he meets this woman. He ends up getting turned into a vampire against his will. Well, it's not a vampire, they're called darklings, but he gets turned into that against his will. And the book is basically about him learning about what he is. As a result of him being turned into this thing, he lost his career, he lost his reputation, he lost his family, like he lost basically everything. He felt like he didn't have anything to live for at this point, and so all he cares about is revenge. That's it. Like, nothing else matters to him. He is like very like single track mind. He's like, I want to track down who did this and I'm gonna kill him. So if that sounds interesting to you, I definitely would recommend this book. Because I had a good time reading it, and honestly I wish I had read it sooner. The next book that I read was The Slumber Party by Shannon Hollinger, or Hollinger, I'm not sure how you say the last name, but I'm not going to talk too much about this. There's a whole vlog that I'm going to do, or I'm in the process of doing. The vlog, obviously you get to see like more of my in-depth like real-time reactions to the book. Very like Pretty Little Liars, very like Yellow Jackets. It's not horror or anything like that. It's not scary, it's not paranormal, none of that. You get like the old high school version of them and then like the present day like adult version of them. That's why I say it reminds me of Yellow Jackets. But in terms of like the plot, it reminds me of Pretty Little Liars, because it's basically these 4 friends who grew up together, are best friends in high school, and something happens to one of them, but now it's like 15 years later, and that secret from the thing that happened back then is slowly starting to unravel. Now they have families, you know, they have husbands and kids and all that kind of stuff, you know, careers, whatever. So they're trying to manage their lives that they've created, but also trying to keep a lid on this very dangerous secret that could turn all of their lives upside down. So I very much enjoyed this. I had a great time reading this. I gave this 4.75 stars. It was so close to a 5 star. I just feel like the character development overall just could have been better, that's all. But I will say, please, 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 if you are someone who cares about trigger warnings and content warnings, please definitely check those before you go into this book. I am not going to tell you what they are, because a lot of like the twists and like shocking moments in this book are or can be triggers for people. So if I tell you what the triggers are or what the content warnings are, then that will spoil parts of the book. So I'd rather you just take it upon yourself if that's what you want to do. The next book is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, I think is the name of the author. And this is a book that had been on my TBR for a long time, probably since sometime last year, probably like last summer or something. So I finally got around to reading it. Also well timed, because you know May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, so I didn't do that on purpose, but it just kind of worked out that way. But this book is basically about a cafe that is, I want to think it's in Tokyo or somewhere in Japan. I don't really remember where it's located, but doesn't matter. The point is, in this cafe, you can visit this cafe and it will allow you to time travel. And so there are 4 different stories of people who go to this cafe and time travel, but there's a bunch of rules to the time travel. So like one of the biggest rules is that you have to return to present day before your coffee gets cold, hence the name of the book. Another rule that is very important in this book is that anything you do will not change your present, which ends up being a huge rule because a lot of people are like, well, if you can't change the present, then what is the point of time traveling? So you kind of get to read these stories and you'll see why, even though it doesn't change your present, why it was still worth doing it. So it was a very unique story. I thought it was very cool. It wasn't like my favorite book that I read for the month. It is a book that I think that if you enjoy like literary fiction or character studies, things like that, I would recommend it for that. I think I gave it, what did I give it, like 3.5? Yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars, so it was fine. This is the first book in a series. I think it's like 3 books in the series. So I'm debating now whether or not I want to read the next book. I haven't decided. I also haven't heard anybody talk about the other books in the series, so I just don't know. I haven't decided. If you have read it or if you plan to read it, let me know that down below in the comments, so that may help inform my decision. The next book that I read was 7 Rules for Breaking Hearts by Kristen J. Miller, and this is a rom-com. This is also part of the vlog that I was talking about, so I'm not going to say too much about this one either because I don't want to, spoil the vlog. But this book follows Margot, and Margot is a podcaster and a social media influencer, and she hosts the podcast with her best friend Joe. The whole like concept of the podcast is about women being single, being in control. The co-host Joe is now getting married, so they are having trouble trying to figure out what they're going to do with the show moving forward, because the whole show was about being single and not looking for a partner, and now here the co-host is getting married. They are losing sponsors as a result of this because news has broken that she's getting married. On top of that, there's the wedding, and the wedding is the destination wedding. Margot is the bridesmaid, the maid of honor, and the best man is someone that she went to high school with that she's not really a huge fan of. And so while on this trip, she gets the idea that she is going to salvage the podcast by finding someone to date, more or less, and she's going to break all of the 7 rules just to prove a point to the audience and the viewers, or listeners I guess in this case, the reason why these rules exist and why they work and what the consequences are when you break them. So yeah, it was a fun story. It's kind of enemies to lovers, it's kind of fake dating. I gave this book 4 stars. I really liked the podcast element and how they incorporated that into the story. What I did not like was the male love interest, Declan. It was almost like his personality was the fact that he didn't have a personality. I don't know, I just wasn't really a fan of him. The next book that I'm going to talk about is a book that I read in the month of May. I think it probably might have even been the first book that I read for the month, but I did not give it a rating because I do not think that I deserve to give this book a rating, and that is The 5th Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is a book that I started a while ago. I think I started this book as part of a buddy read back in March, maybe? I really can't remember, but obviously it's taken me a while to finish. And this book was just confusing. I was just extremely confused. I would say for 80% of the book, I was confused. I understood very little to none of what was going on in this story. And that's the reason why I don't feel like I should give it a rating, because I don't think that I should rate the book poorly just because I didn't understand what was going on. It's high fantasy. The way this book is written, it's written in a way where like you would think that this is not the first book in the series. This book does a lot of like world building, but not in a way where it is explained to you. They just kind of say stuff and talk about stuff as if you already know what's going on, hence the appendix in the back that I didn't know about. So I just kept reading and hoping that eventually things would click into place, which they never did. It sounded like it was probably cool. Maybe later in life I will circle back around to this once I like have read more fantasy and stuff. Maybe I'll circle back around to this and give it another shot and like start from the beginning, give it a clean slate. But as of right now, I read the first book. It probably was really good. I didn't understand most of it. Will not be continuing with the series, and I'm also not going to give it a rating because I don't think that's fair to the book and the author to do that. And the last book that I read for the month of May is The Last Count of Monte Cristo by, I'm gonna butcher this name, I don't know, Jama-Everett. This is a graphic novel. that is a retelling of The Count of Monte Cristo, which was a novel by, I think it's Alexander Dumas. But this is a sci-fi, like futuristic retelling of that story. I didn't know this going into it. The author of the original book, Alexander Dumas, his father is who the original story is based on, or like the character in the original story. I think the character's name is like Dantes, I don't know how you say the name, but that character is based on the author's father. That was the inspiration. What most people don't know is that his father was a person of color. He, I believe, is like half Haitian, which means obviously the author is also part Haitian as well. But because of the time period that the story was written in, it obviously wasn't something that was highlighted. The main character, Dantes, in this story is a person of color. So I thought that was awesome that they, you know, finally like highlighted that and like brought that to the forefront. So I thought that was amazing. But this story, if you are not familiar with the original story, which to be honest, I wasn't, but it's a story that I've heard good things about, but it's far too long. I will never read that book. And this book basically follows Dantes, and Dantes, I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, but he is a sailor. And he, you know, he has his life going on. You know, he got his girl, he's engaged, he's about to get married. He has some haters. And the haters basically set him up and they frame him and get him thrown in jail for a crime that he did not commit. So 10 years, I think, go by that he's in prison before he, you know, escapes. And then once he escapes, his whole, again, one-track mind, he is set on revenge and getting revenge against these people that did him dirty. This guy, Dantes, like, he is the definition of like playing the long game. And that, I think, is what I like the most about his character, is that he was so committed to the revenge that he spent like all his time like perfectly crafting this like revenge plan, and I love that for him. It takes place like almost 200 years in the future. There's a lot of commentary about like climate change and technology and generations and evolution and all kinds of stuff. There are parts of this story that also kind of like go over my head, but it doesn't get in the way of the plot. I'm still able to understand like what's going on and get the gist of things, so that did not affect my understanding of the story. I gave this book 3.75 stars. This book actually pulls a lot from like African culture. This story takes place in and around like Africa. So there is a lot of like cultural references, language, religion, and things like that that is pulled from kind of like that region. So a lot of like not just African but also like Islamic references and things like that. So I thought that was cool how the author incorporated that. But this book was, like I said, it was just a really fun time, really good story, very action-packed. You got war, you got pirates, you got politics, just a lot happening. And yeah, I definitely recommend checking this story out. And those are all the books that I read for the month of May. Let me know down below what books you read for the month of May, or if you read any of these, what you thought of them, or if you plan on reading these or adding these to your TBR after watching this video. Let me know that down below in the comments. As always, my social media and links will be down below in the description box. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, all that stuff that you guys know how to do. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye. He's like, do you want a copy? I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna turn down, you know, a free, you know, copy of a book.